first, thank you so much for coming out. Yeah, like I said, my name is Thomas Jackson. I'm a local guy. I'm from here, from Tallahassee. And I just want to say, thanks so much for coming out here and just, hearing about 3D printing. Obviously, it's still a pretty small group, and I thought it would be a little bit more. But that honestly says a lot about what people have to, we got a lot of ways to go as far as educating people about 3D printing and what it can do, the power of it, I guess you could say. And I think this room in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, who knows, may be full. But right now, it'll start here with us, on the smaller stage. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But I appreciate everybody coming out. I really do. So let's get started. Yeah, let me skip back here actually. So this is my intro video. I like to show this only because I'm pretty proud that I think video rendering in general has came so far, so long. Toy Story was one of my favorite movies of all time. And the first time seeing Buzz Lightyear come out of that box and be so excited about where he was and what he was doing. I lost like a sense of I forgot that I was in a movie. I forgot that I was watching characters, that somebody had digitally created that character, recorded the voice, went through all that. I was just watching a character on screen and kind of lost in the entire presence of everything that was going on. And I thought, Toy Story was going to lead to something bigger. I didn't know what, and sure enough, 3D printing has a lot to do with 3D modeling and how those characters were brought to life. And all these years later, here I am still chasing some of those same principles. But so this is my first video. This was of course, there we go. It's just a quick, simple intro. Nothing too, crazy. I think honestly anybody, it'd be kind of like a future business card, if you will. A quick little video representation of you. And I think that's going to change for me all the time. I'm hopefully going to do one of those each year. But I think that's a cool thing, that when you're a 3D modeler, that becomes something you can do. That's just something, that's a part of your repertoire of trade of tricks, I guess you could say. So that's not something that's outside of your realm. Appreciate it. So, intro to 3D printing. So like I said, a little bit about me. I started out as a web and graphic designer, and I always loved just the arts and chasing those passions, if you will. And then printing, and I had been kind of following it since I can, as far as I can remember, since I was a kid. And the idea that you could teach a computer to make things for you, I think that idea was kind of special to me. So I just, 3D printing is just one of those concepts that hit home to me at a young age. So I was always looking for the technology to come. And just in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years has it came down in price enough to where I could access it as a student, if you will, just starting out in the world, if you will. Virtual reality developer, that's pretty recent. I love virtual reality. I think virtual reality is going to be one of the next big mediums, and I'll be spending a lot of time doing things like this, promoting VR as well. But VR and 3D printing go together really well. They're complements of each other. If you can produce something in 3D space and then bring it to the world, like you see on the table here, then you can also produce that same thing in a virtual space and put a pair of goggles on and actually hold it, see what it's like, in a virtual space before you ever bring it to a physical space. So I love these two technologies, and like I said, I'll be spending a lot of time talking about that. And like I said, I'm from Tallahassee, which a lot of people, for some reason, don't think that's the case. So anyway, 3D printing is printing matter in 3 dimensions, okay? X, Y, and Z, and that's a huge fundamental thing that, I had always kind of known, but until you see it happening, until you see, and unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't bring a printer here today physically to show you, but the printer is handling X, Y, and Z space, and what that means is that it's moving over the X plane, left and right, it's moving on the Y plane, forward and back, and it's moving on the Z plane, up and down. It doesn't move it all directions at the same time. It doesn't have to. It just needs to move in a series of instructions, left, right, up, down, to create a geometric shape over time. What that means is that the build plate starts high, and there's different types of printers, but we're going to go, over the basic, personal printer that you see, in most laboratories and field offices today. The personal desktop printer, if you will, lays down in successive materials, meaning it starts at one stage and successfully lays down another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. It doesn't have to produce all the layers at once, it's just one layer at a time. And when you break it down like that, things become a lot easier to create and understand how you're creating it. Variety of the materials is huge. I think that is one of the misnomers about 3D printing right now, and it scares a lot of people, is they think it's just plastic. They think it's just what you see here today. And sure, it is. And if you're buying a desktop printer that is $2,000 or $3,000, you're right, it might just be plastic. But here's the thing. This gives you the building blocks to go and refine any piece, any prototype, until it's actually right. When you actually want to create a metal version, and you can use that same model, the same one that you've been working on in the plastic, to create the metal one. And what I mean is there's companies already out there, and I've already taken advantage of some of these services like Shapeways that allow you to take this 3D model, the one you've been working on at your house for however long, and then summon it out to one of their printers and have it created in metal. So just because, like I said, you're working at plastic with your home office, doesn't mean when you're ready to go, we can't get you steel, aluminum, brass, bronze. The materials are amazing, and it's just amazing to think that we're already so far so quickly. And like I said, people are really just starting to wrap their heads around 3D printing in general. Like I said, many shapes and sizes. I can't wait till I have the ability to afford one of these printers. I mean, if I had $500,000 right now, that's where I would spend it. I would get the best 3D printer I could get and spend all day figuring out the things that I could make with that. Because there's printers out there right now that have even multi-use materials, meaning like they can actually print in plastic, then switch to rubber, then switch to a hybrid polymer, and they can fuse all those together into one thing when it comes out of the printer. So it's not just plastic, it's an actual usable part ready to go right out of the printer. All the same concepts that start here apply there. So, you know, it's the building blocks. It's like when you first started learning math, you had to know what 2 + 2 was before you could go on and do algebra. You got to know the fundamentals of the way the stuff works. You can practice all day with this stuff, and then you can scale up as you learn. It's a really exciting process. I've been doing it for the last 2 years now. It's just, it's wonderful. This is a quick definition. I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's that idea, like I told you, successive layers, a CAD model that's in the computer, and if you can create that model, that CAD, that virtual representation of the object, then you can summon that file over to a printer, and it can whip the instructions up and read those instructions in order to turn those instructions into movements for the printer, and the printer will actually then build the object up over time. Now, some of these prints, like you say here, would take anywhere from maybe an hour or 3, or maybe something like this Terminator head takes something like maybe 6 or 7 hours to print something like that. So whereas that seems like a lot of people like watching paint dry, which is funny, that's how impatient we have gotten. That's really fast. If you were to give a woodsmith a block of wood and tasked him 50 years ago to cut away from that wood and chisel that Terminator head out, it would take a long time. And he'd be really good, and you'd have to pay him probably a really good sum of money to get something that accurate. But to get that in 7 hours with a click of a button changes everything. And that's where we stand today with 3D printing. And when people wrap their head around that, I think a whole new set of standards is going to come into play with what we can do. We're no longer building for what we have available. We're building in whatever's our wildest imaginations, and we're just letting the printer do the rest. So the history, it's so much, and like I said, I struggled with this last time, and I'm still going to, over time, try to improve this area. But, the one thing I don't want you to miss is that, the technology's been around for a while. It didn't just start. Chuck Hull was kind of the main guy. 1984 was when he was first doing the seminal work of putting together what was going to be the STL file format, which was basically the file format that has now became the standard for what these models consist of, what the computer can read, and then what we can send over to the printer and have it print for us. So that file format was created long ago by Chuck Hull, and he's been working on continuing to make 3D printers better for a long time. It's just into the late 2000s and now in the late of this decade that we're finally starting to get access to it. Like I said, our plane parts, our jet airplanes have parts in them right now that have been built by 3D printers that are flying in the air right now. And use this printer is ran by one person, and costs $2,000 or $3,000. So it's a complete difference of just really resource availability. And now that we're catching up, It's going to be exciting. This is really, 2013 and 2014 has really been the seminal years for 3D printing, I think, and it's really hit an all-time peak as far as just public awareness, I guess you could say. So that takes us to now. Like I said, the public awareness is at an all-time high. I've never seen it. Every time I bring it up or I show people things that I'm making or doing or building, they know exactly what I'm doing. They've heard of 3D printing, they've seen it on the news a million times. It still hasn't hit home from them though, because I don't think they're actually using things in their life that actually have been 3D printed and are actually helping them. When that happens, I think that's when that public awareness is even going to go to that next level. There's a, I'm going to say, unfortunate individual here around the campus that, let's say that is outside of a convenience station one day. Me and my buddy struck up a conversation with him, and we asked him, and we said, would you, if we could print you right now, and it's funny, he actually had heard of 3D printing, which was, I'd already taken us back, but we said, if we could make you right now a prosthetic arm that you could use, that you could at least grab an object with and pick it up and release that object with. He was obviously a war vet of sorts, and he had been through a lot. He had lost an arm in some way, and like I said, he had had some type of disfigurement here, but with a prosthetic that we could build, we could just give him that, and that 3D print would really change his life. You see what I mean? It wouldn't just be a piece of plastic anymore. It would be a device that allows him to hold things and feel even like he has something that someone cared about that he can use as a tool again, like your hand is. At least somebody cared to build it on something like this and give him the opportunity to hold something again. So that's what I mean about there are powerful tools that we can build right now that will affect lives. It just takes doing it for people. It takes the hard work of figuring out how to create that piece for those people and make a difference. So I'm working on that, and I know a lot of other makers are beginning to do that right now. It's kind of a movement. We call it like the makers movement, but it's an entire movement of people who just understand 3D printing. They get the power of it, they get the ability that it has to make a difference, and they're just making things. They just don't have any limits of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to make. From little things, house gadgets. My buddy's fridge, have you ever had a piece, a little plastic nub that will break in your refrigerator and then a shelf will fall? Well, how do you fix that shelf piece? How do you fix that little bracket that doesn't exist? You're going to call up the place and, hey, I need that little piece that broke in my fridge. No, you can go to your 3D printer. You can call up the dimensions of the little piece. You can recreate the shape. You can print it. You could install it in your fridge, and you could have a working fridge by night time. I mean, we've seen it happen. I'm watching it happen, and like I said, it's going to take people actually doing those type of things, using the products like I use my cell phone case every day. And when you're holding something that you've created, and when you're using it, like I said, when it actually, I've dropped my phone and it actually worked. It actually did what a case is supposed to do for a phone. Then it starts to sink in. Oh, this is real. I didn't go to Best Buy and buy this. I made it, and that's impactful. And I'm telling you, as each and every one of you in this room do that for your first time, use a 3D printed piece, have it actually make a difference for you, are you going to see the power of some of these tools and some of the things that 3D printing really allows you to do. So like I said, that kind of just takes the new perspective, the customization aspect. One thing that's funny, I see people that will go out and they'll create 1,000 t-shirts for one day, one event, and they go out and they sell those t-shirts. It's great. But what happens when there's a specific day or a specific event, it's just a one-time thing? Well, instead of just buying a t-shirt, what if you created a hat, or created a mask, or created your favorite emblem for your team, just for that day? It could have the day written into the actual piece itself. There's going to be a new customization aspect to the way we can create for the moment that I just think is just going to be absolutely amazing. I'm talking about just individual, to the day, to the minute products, which is going to be an exciting, I think, revolution in itself. But so, opportunities, it's fast. Like I said, it's really fast. As I said, to put it in perspective, some of these pieces, even you see up here, to recreate them any other way, the process to go through the process to go through from having an idea to assembling the prototype, to working with the manufacturers overseas that can help you prepare it, to having them actually ship it to you, to shipping it back over here. This has always been a process that we've been fighting for years. This really cuts that down to nothing. You don't even have to actually go overseas anymore. You can do it right here in America, and sure enough, I've been watching thousands of 3D printing prototype companies all over America spring up that are helping individuals, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large-sized businesses, you name it, build products right here in America. Kickstarter is actually a wonderful example of crowdsourced funding and how 3D printing has been used there to make some of the most amazing products I've ever seen, and Kickstarter has just continued to use 3D printing as a way to usher in new products that we just couldn't even have imagined, and that's, I think, is going to continue. So it also encourages collaboration big time. When you have something, and I do this at tech space I'm working at here, Domi Station, but one of the guys out here now, when I created this case, I went over and I gave it to him. And I said, hold this, and then he held it, and then he was like, well, I really like this, but I would change this about it. I would move this over here. I would like to see this here. And I had this epiphany. I was like, I would have never gotten that insight or never found out that perspective, if you will, unless I had the ability to just put this in his hands and let him hold it and let him see it. This was something I created, but then when I gave it to him, it was very easy for him to just tap into that perspective and give me feedback, good feedback, about what it was, and how I could make it better. So I was able to prototype and make this case a lot better, a lot quicker, through just having the ability to, collaborate. So that's, like I said, that's going to lead, I feel like, to new standards. Right now, we just have a certain set of standards for what we think is awesome. And I think 3D printing is going to change that. It kind of raises the bar, if you will, because if anybody can just click print and get one of these, well, then it's going to be that one that's done some crazy, different way that's going to be the unique one everyone's going to want. You see what I mean? It changes the standard. So it's exciting. Threats, and obviously there's a lot of them. We're standing in one of them right now. There's public awareness. There's one thing to see a blip of it on a news report, right? And they do like a 3-minute salvo on 3D printing, and you think you know everything there is about it. No, it's so much deeper than that. It's an entire, this 1 hour that I could spend with you guys, I could spend 10 hours with you guys talking about just some of the different industries that 3D printing is impacting, from architecture to health to medicine. And each one of those different industries has their own challenges and unique, factors that go into them. But the thing is that still here in this room, people aren't willing to do, I guess you say, the work to learn about the process. Any new technology has a learning curve. 3D printing, the fundamentals of what you're doing, how to look at an object and kind of break it down by its fundamental shapes, and then actually going through the process of you yourself jumping into a CAD program and actually developing something and using it. Whether it's just something easy like something that, a great print that I'd encourage anybody to do is if ever you had a piece of furniture in your house that's unlevel in your house, print a little piece that will go under one of the stands to one of your legs so that it's not anymore. Just print it. You can take the little height of how much is missing, and you can just create a little simple block or whatever you need, print it and stick it under there. You'll know that you created that, and it's something that works. But it's a fun little print that when I did the first time, it was one of those things, like I said, it's useful, it works, and when you see it actually making a difference in your chair or table or whatever, it has a little bit more of a impact on you and kind of understanding what this stuff can do. So technical hurdles, consistency. These prints are all very clean. That is not the case 75% of the time. Once you get something clean, it stays clean forever. You've done the research and figuring out how to make it. But getting this piece, for example, to print with those lines that accurately was a challenge. But now that the work has been done and I figured out what was needed in order to make the printer handle that type of print, I can just hit print over and over again and it'll do it just that way. It'll do it perfectly. So you do a lot of time and research into figuring out how to get the consistency right But once you get it right, it's all yours. I mean, you can just hit print over and over again, and you get this result, just amazingly clean, no problems. And another beauty about it, 3D printing, is the fact that the consistency changes over from printer to printer. So what I mean is, you know, you have one file, and if that's your STL, 10 years from now, we might have a printer that can also still read that STL, and you could just throw it in something and hit print. So it you know, as far as having an awesome medium like a file format to digitally distribute a thing that you've created, we've never really had that before, and that's a whole nother, you know, piece we can go into. But consistency is definitely a threat. Next subject really is recycling. This is what I'd like to see, honestly, even start in Tallahassee, and I'm going to try to get this kind of potentially going here pretty soon. But recycling and how we can use basically the whole recycling effort in an area to actually create some of the material that we need to use in a 3D printer. So we can take recycled material, we can chop it down, turn it back into the filament, the very spool of filament needed to reproduce something like this. So it's the idea of taking raw material and producing a complex part with it, and I think that that's a local thing that we can get going here shortly, and I'd love to get started, like I said, with taking those into the schools, donating maybe some printers and allowing kids to take some of that recycled material and just let them print whatever they want. You know, because a big hurdle to 3D printing is the cost of the material. But if we're recycling it and we're donating it to the people who need it and would love to, you know, try and use it, I think it can make a big impact. And then that leads to new materials. When you have the ability to kind of mulch up different stuff, I've seen some new materials that I had never believed were going to be as strong or as lightweight or robust, just by trying different things, just by trying mixing one a little bit, you know, more of one than the other. So it's really an A/B error testing kind of deal when it comes to the materials, and recycling, I think, is going to lead to whole new you know, materials, and that's just an exciting area. Applications, the list just keeps building, but like I said, I really love this list. I think this list is like just amazing, the fact that it touches this many industries. And like I said, I'm not going to read them all, but you know, architecture is just so fundamentally going to change, I think. Automotive is you know, we've already seen some stuff. Biotech, you know, I have a couple stories I'm going to talk about today in biotech that are just absolutely awesome. So, like I said, a lot of industries. So health, the first custom 3D printed organ, like I said, I talked about this story last time. It was a Kaliba, is the one on the top left. She had a deformed trachea at birth. They were able to actually go in, take a model of her trachea and what it should be, and actually reprint. That's the one you see in the top left. The guy is actually holding the 3D printed model that they were able to install after she was born, and it's still working. That was something like 18 months ago, and that was an amazing, amazing story. Another one, which I'm pretty excited about, is Alex, and this just recently happened. I think it was 10 months, I think, no, just this past July. But this actually happened in Florida, and just down, I think, in Orlando, UCF hospital. Alex was born without, his right arm. Was born without his right arm, and they were able to build him a prosthetic, 3D print him a prosthetic that he's now using. He said all the kids in class call him like Terminator, and that they're all like, you know, like in awe of like how cool he looks. They said they used to look at him, and he could tell that people looked at him and gave him a sense of like they felt bad for him because he was missing something. It was obvious. Oh, he's missing his arm. So now people look at him and he feels like, they look at him like he's cool, like he has something that they don't have. Like it's like, oh man, can I check it out? Can I see your arm? I think that's amazingly powerful. And just to give this kid the opportunity to live kind of that normal life, if you will, instead of him just, you know, kind of always being looked at, if you will. That's an incredible opportunity we have. So that's an exciting story, and there's a lot more like it. I'm going to play this one video. I'm going to skip through it real quick. This is a great talk from Ted, and Ted is an absolute treasure trove of amazing people working on amazing stuff. But I'm going to skip.
We then shape that material, and then use those cells to code that material one layer at a time. Very much like baking layer cake, if you will. We then place that in an oven like device and we're able to create that structure and bring it out. This is actually a heart valve that we've engineered. And you can see here we have the structure of the heart valve, and we seated that with cells. And then we exercise it, so you feel leaflets opening and closing of this heart valve that's currently being used experimentally to try to get it to further studies. Another technology we have used.
So the idea to being able to, take the 3D model of a part that you currently have, print a scaffolding, if you will, like a empty, shallow, suitcase, if you will, so that they can inject your own cells in it and then watch it come back. That's what they've been able to do with a few different organs, and sure enough, when they use your own cells, your stuff, and they put it in the right environment, the same environment that your body consists of, the same, the conditions that the organ would be in, they've started working, and they've been able to take some of these organs and install them into that person, and your body doesn't reject it. Your body will accept it because it was your cells. They grew your cells into an organ, and then when they replace it, they don't have those issues of the same organ problems, transfer that we have today. Last 3 years, I've seen more cases than I honestly ever thought I would see so quickly. So it's exciting. The health stuff is amazing. This is the last one. This was a doctor at Peking University. He successfully implanted the first 3D printed vertebrae. So that's, absolutely huge. This kid was going to have some serious spinal issues in his life, okay? But to be able to model his spinal cord and then create a piece for his vertebrae that is custom, that is unique, that will work for him specifically, and will be able to be, upgraded through time or whatnot. But this, malignant tumor in his spinal cord replaced. So it's really beginning to help people right now. The technology is just in its infancy, and these doctors are just getting their chops on this stuff. So it's really exciting. This is the Build a House. Showed this one last time as well, and I think this is worth looking at again because this is a really good standard to look at. This is a really good example of what 3D printing can do when you're motivated to do it with a purpose. And what I mean is this company in China, So one thing they didn't talk about was those walls were built a certain way. The way the concrete is being laid down in between the walls is actually a special infill pattern, if you will, that makes the wall stronger. Something like the standard wall like that would be like 3,000 pounds of PSI strength to knock it over. Those walls are something rated like 10,000. Okay, and those were laid down by a 3D printer like that. And so if you can design a structure, let's say even public housing, right? And you can lay down walls like that, those will stand a lot longer than any of the walls we've been building. I'll tell you that. So you can really take architecture to a whole new ballgame. And we're going to get there actually in a little bit. But I thought that was a really cool story, because that was 24 hours. And they did 10 houses. And they did it kind of, I think, as a proof of concept. You know, I'd like to see some guys here do it. I think I'm going to try to do it. But, you know, have a plan, build the printer, go to a space, build some stuff. You know, you do the preparation work off-site, you show up, the raw material on-site, you feed concrete or a hybrid concrete-like material into a printer that looks something like this, and the same process. It's 3D printing. So that's really exciting. I think architecture is going to be a huge field. That leads me to this slide, which I really love. This one, you know, really speaks to what we're going to be able to do with just like, for example, the automotive area. You know, when you build a frame to a car, typically the way you build it is because of the way it needs to be assembled, right, in a factory. And we need to build it so that it can be assembled using those parts in that factory. It has to be built a certain way. Well, when you're not limited by the way you're going to build something, the ideas and the way you can build the frame of something completely change. So instead of you having to build a frame that is made in some factory, some floor, you can make a frame like this that's actually contoured to the person's body, to the length of you. Why should your car be any other length than the driver, if that was the purpose of it, really? If that was the one purpose of that particular vehicle was for you, why shouldn't it just fit you? So we're going to move to this ability to actually produce for the individual, even at the car level, let's say. Okay, so it's exciting, and even this mask, like I said, I feel like represents, you know, the structure of having something that complex, but all one piece, just one piece. So strength is another thing. This is the 3D printing metals video, which I'll show just a quick clip of it. I think it's So we're talking about some really exotic parts. I mean, when you have a printer like that, they can print metal parts like that. You can change, like this part used to be like this, and now I can make it that small, because I can do the same processes and run it through an area that's much smaller and much more efficient and get the same result. Some of these parts that I've seen some of the people designing are completely different outside the way they've been built in the past, but that's also because they have completely different abilities now. The 3D printer allows you to print things with very unique geometric shapes. And it doesn't, you know, care if, you know, you're trying to build some crazy swivel shape next to a very square flat shape. It doesn't care. It's just a series of instructions, and as long as you're doing the work that you need to do as far as the preparation of getting it to having the support structure, which we'll get to too, hopefully, in place, it'll print it. So some of these metal structures are just absolutely amazing. If you guys have time, I'd say, take some time to check some of those out, because people are doing some really cool stuff when it comes to the metal work. So prototyping. Like I said, brought this up before, from months to days, thousands of dollars, to hundreds of dollars. I've already helped, like I said, a few different clients here in town that have pending patents on products that they're trying to bring to the market. And instead of them going out to the old manufacturing route, they just came to me. And we've been working side by side on a very personal level to try and get it right. And once they have a working prototype that's good enough, they can go to the investor or the next level and say, hey, look, this is it. This is my idea. And they have something to show. They have something to hold and show. So the prototyping is very powerful for the entrepreneur, for the person that has just an idea and wants to create something. This is your go-to tool. So like I said, it empowers the individual, and how custom can we make things. It's an exciting notion. So the future, this is, like I said, some of this projected, industry reports, I guess you could say, but the future's bright for 3D printing. And the amount of money that's going to be spent manufacturing using 3D printing is projected to just go crazy over the next decade or so. So it's an interesting stat to think that, like I said, there's not that much happening now, but yet it's expected to grow that much. So something to just keep your mind on. This is one of my favorite slides too. So I'm a huge gamer. I don't know if anybody knows that, but I love games, and a lot of the reason I play some games sometimes is just I feel like the sci-fi lore and some of the stories that go into the background of some of the things are pretty amazing. But I've actually pulled some of these architecture pictures from Mass Effect, I believe. It's a great game. But some of the architecture within that game, the concept art, is actually based on some real ideas. And those ideas are the idea that we're going to be able to create structures that have actually been simulated and tested on a computer before we actually ever build them and construct them. And what I mean is a structure like this, and the way it's shaped, before this structure is ever put down and built in the area where it's built, literally the terraformation of the way the earth is laid out has been looked at. Meaning, when the wind comes by, does it roll off this mountain behind this building? Where does that wind go? How is that wind going to affect, hit this building? Where is the wind going to travel when it hits the building? All of those factors can be pre-looked at before a building like this is ever constructed. So what I mean is, what that leads to is you can do things like, well, what happens when a 250-mile-an-hour wind gust comes and hits that building? What happens? Well, normal architecture, sometimes we don't know. We think, well, a lot of times it's going to fall. If a 250-mile-an-hour wind hit any building of ours, it would fall. But with 3D printing and forethought in the design of a building and where you're building it, you could actually build a building that doesn't fall, that doesn't fall from an earthquake, or that doesn't fall from a powerful wind gust, or it's built for the environment, if you will. And people are proposing all kinds of different designs now, like I said, using 3D printing on a small scale. And then when they get them right, I feel like one of these days we are going to start printing some of these structures. But what I mean is the computer allows us to actually do a lot of the simulation testing, if you will, behind the scenes. If we're printing it in life that same way, then we know what we actually did on the computer is going to be the same way. Do you see what I mean? What we tested in the computer is going to actually be that way when we print the building. So that's never been like that before, and that's why I think that's going to be a seminal change in the future for future architecture. So how do you get started? Because that's the biggest thing, and like I said, I really like to talk more about the communities and stuff and the way you get started and how I got started. But you really got to get out there. There's some really great communities to get going, and you don't need access to a 3D printer at all to start doing this stuff. So what I mean is Thingiverse.com is actually a great website that my printer company MakerBot created. It's basically a free marketplace for people to submit and upload their 3D models, print some of those models like I've done here today. You learn a lot that way. I would recommend you guys do that. I mean, right now there's 100,000 plus things on Thingiverse. Things are sectioned off into categories. I guarantee if you guys go on that website tonight, look up some products that you think might be interesting or useful to you, download it, go on shapeways.com, upload the model, order it. They'll have it at your doorstep in a couple days. You could come into a place here, have it printed locally, actually see it get printed. That'd be an option too. Feel free, Domi Station, if you guys want to come and get that done. But there's other places here as well, other resources. Making Awesome is going to have a new space opening up here shortly, which I'm really, really excited about. So the files are there. What I mean, you don't have to, reinvent the wheel here. Just go find something that you like, download it, see if you can make it, like you, not anyone else but you. The online learning, there's some really great tools and systems out there. Linda, Treehouse, Digital Tutors. They're online services that have 3D printing material and stuff that you can kind of get learning more about the intricacies. After this, am preparing my next level, the more advanced class to this class. This is the intro class. What is 3D printing? But my follow-up to this, hopefully about a month or so, it'll be ready. Will be printing, making things. It'll be more of the intermediary class, I guess, if you will, of actually doing prints, running into problems, figuring out the solutions, where do you go to figure out solutions, etc. So if you guys are interested in that, that'll be coming up as well. But like I said, workshops, really just getting your hands on with stuff is how you learn. So you gotta get your hands on. Like I said, so Thingiverse, it's kind of what the website looks like. And once again, I just highly recommend you guys check that out. And really great resource they put together. And this is Shapeways. Like I said, I put my cell phone case, and this speaks to another topic that we should probably talk about real quick. But that's just the ability for one man as an individual now to be a marketplace. And I think that's pretty awesome. The fact that any one of you guys right now, if you guys start the journey of trying to create your own product, you can go to a place like Shapeways amongst others. Shapeways isn't the only one, but it's one that allows you to just upload your model, like I did, of that phone case that I built, and now anybody in the world can go on that website and buy it and order it. And I don't have to do anything. They put it in their printer. They ship it to the customer. They worry about customer service and whether or not they're happy or not. They deal with that. I'm just the builder of the file, and I've put it on a marketplace. But when I did that, it really set off a idea that, wow, everybody has that opportunity. Everybody has the opportunity to have an idea and at least have a place to sell it. And you don't have to do much at all to get that. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything to at least get a little miniature shop going. So I actually might do a class just specifically on taking a product to a store like that, and kind of how to do some of the other stuff, like taking pictures and things like that. But that is just that was my first product, and that was only about a month ago. But this it's been going pretty well since I put that up there, and I just can't wait, like I said, to see what other people make, and then how it gets. This is your own personal Kickstarter right here. Kickstarter's great. It's crowdsourced funding. Not everybody can put a awesome video together in a commercial. Maybe you just have a great idea and you want to sell a few. Shapeways could be it. So open source, I love open source stuff, just in general. And what that means is just stuff like software that's built by the community, that the community upgrades and works on. There's some great software out there that's paid from Autodesk and different companies, but I've been using Blender for a really long time now, and if you're new, if you're new and you're committed to 3D printing, I would say Blender isn't a bad choice. But if you are just getting in and you really just want to poke around and be easy with it, I'd say SketchUp is a really good choice. There's some other easier, software modeling programs that are coming online, stuff that you can even do in a browser, that's making it a lot easier. But Blender is a great tool, and it's open source. Makerware is the program. There's always going to be a program that works as the intermediary between your printer that you're printing with and the printer and the software that you're building the model in. So make sure whatever printer you buy that you're paying attention to what the software is that printer uses, because that's going to affect you. You see what I mean? If you're building your own printer, you better find out what software you're going to be using for that printer. If you're going to buy a MakerBot, Makerware is that software, so you might want to take a look at that. So that's just my point on that tidbit, is whatever printer you decide to use, get familiar with the software that the printer uses itself at that level. Alright, so I got the presentation available for download after this. It's pretty much the conclusion. Find me on my website. I'm going to be posting a lot of updates about just everything I'm working on. I try to, as much as I can. Technology Grows is the academy that I'm working with, is putting on these educational 3D printing tutorials and workshops and classes and stuff. We're going to be doing some online stuff as well. And then definitely feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Sanction1. And so, any questions? That's it. Awesome.
axis.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that one that's closest to you, there's like spiral.
Yeah.
How would you print something like that without it collapsing in on itself?
Right, so this was a really, really cool print, and the way it actually printed was no support, and it actually went around and touched each arm as it went up. So it was flat, and it literally, if you can imagine this being this short, went around and touched each arm. Now, what you have to mean, and what I mean about like in that intermediate class, what you're going to learn is that you'll learn as you're building, you're always fighting gravity, okay? You're always, gravity's wanting to pull this down and you're trying to build up. So what you have to be thinking about is, well, how far of an angle can I go this way before it falls? If you can stay in that angle, if you can stay within that tolerance of this is how much I can cut it, I think we call it the angle of threshold is the name of that, then you're good. And that just is walking that line. You see what I mean? It's walking that line, that thin line of, well, I can go about this far over each cut, each time it goes around, so that it gets that nice figure, but didn't require any support. If you go too much, it wouldn't be possible, and it would need support up under that in order to build it. So that was a really good question, and stuff like that, and this is what's going to be covered in that, like I said, that intermediate class and just going forward. One thing I didn't get to talk about is, so this build, like I said, which I just absolutely love this build, but what I've taken out of here, and I didn't get to show you guys, were some pieces of support material that I've actually broken. This is what it looks like. Broken out. You can pass this guys around again. But the support material kind of looks like this, and there's these little strut bars. And those bars actually go in all the little crevices where they're needed as it's printing. So if you want to pass that around, those are two I left in there purposely, those little strut bars. But if you could imagine, those are actually automatically, well, not automatically, that's something you have to learn to generate, but you have to generate those bars. Wherever you need support, a bar is there, okay? Exactly, it's the same thing. It's actually just made with a tip to it, where when it touches the item, it's made to just be touching it just slightly, so that when the print's done, you just hit the bar and the bar knocks right out.
If you're printing in metal,
metal is not needed, because the way those printers work are a completely different process, and they typically, most of the way the metal ones work, they go down in more of a vat, and then things are actually, they come out as, more of it's a completely different process. It's the desktop printers that you're kind of going through a little bit to kind of figure out the ways to print certain things, but you learn a lot too, because you can apply those things, and you get way cleaner prints. The computer and you're just hitting print typically doesn't give you the cleanest result. If you spend some time saying, hey, I need to put a support bar here, a support bar here, and yeah, I'm going to go like I said, the next class where I'm actually taking a model like the Terminator head and actually building the strut bars and showing you how those are actually built and generated, and then sending that to print. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I think it's for the basic type of printing, like just use monofilm. So where do you purchase that, or where do you get that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because there was no, when I got my printer, there was no like guide to that. I was like, well, can I make my own? Or how? What options are available? So yeah, no, online is definitely your best bet. I still have yet to find a good vendor here locally that you could just go to in Tallahassee and pick up some filament, but Amazon's just really a great place to start as far as finding different vendors and the ones that are available.
Where do you what's the competition? Where does it need to be in order to be?
Well, so the biggest thing you're going to run into with your filament is people who are making it and the tolerance that they use when they make it. So what I mean is, it comes in a little, I don't know if I brought any to look at, it comes in a little string, think of a spool that's spooled up on. Well, the tolerance of the spool is it's 1.75 millimeter, okay? And good filament, when it's going and feeding through the printer, won't go too much bigger than that or too much smaller than that. Because if it does, it jams your printer. Because the filament is actually coming down and in and through the machine. And you imagine if someone who didn't do a good job preparing their filament had it too inconsistent, when it tries to go through, it's going to get stuck. And sure enough, that's what happens. So finding a good vendor, and I've found only 2 so far. It's Delta Maker. It's a really good company. They actually, I think, do some of the MakerBot material, and then MakerBot has some of the most consistent material that I've found that doesn't give my printer problems. But about 40 bucks. And just to give you guys an idea, 40 bucks of filament, which is 1 spool, would probably do about 50 of these iPhone 6 case, or about maybe 7 or 8 of these. This is a MacBook Pro laptop stand out of one $40 roll of plastic. So there's other cool materials coming too, as far as just the filament. Ninja Flex, it's called. It's actually a flexible material that's like kind of like you'd imagine like the sole of a shoe, like that flexible rubbery feeling. There's dissolvable, which I actually just got some in, which is amazing. So it allows you to print things that have intricate, complex interior parts, if you will, because with the dissolvable you can print the support in the dissolvable and then actually put it in a solution when you're done and pull it out, and the dissolvable will be gone, and all that's left is the intricate moving parts in the piece. So I've done a couple pieces like that that just could not have been built any other way without the dissolvable solution. That's what I mean. There's some really cool filament that's coming online that makes this stuff really fun to play with. The other thing is the painting. I actually painted this myself, so there's actually some really cool new paint that works really well on plastic that I've been able to find. So the material science, and this actually makes it have this nice rubber feel. I don't know if you guys want to pass this around or touch the bottom of this. It actually has this nice rubberized feel. So one of the slides, I don't know if I left other, but talk about being at the frontiers of material science with this stuff, but you really are. It's like when you have plastic and you're just trying to like figure out better ways to coat it, and so it lasts longer. We had that question about the Predator and the melting. It'd be great if we had a solution. We just dip it in and then it makes it, so it's really fun to play around when you build stuff, and then you can try out these different solutions and stuff to protect your stuff. So yeah, a lot of advancements there. Any other questions? All right. Thanks. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.